So welcome everybody to this latest episode of Macklin's Take with me, Andy Clark and Matt Macklin. Hope everybody's well. What a few days we've had in boxing. This time last week when we were chatting to Sonny Edwards, we were thinking that the announcement for AJ against Fury was imminent. In fairness, we'd been told that it was imminent for quite a long time. And a week later, we're sitting looking forward to Fury Wilder 3. Probably Joshua Usyk, and Pacquiao Spence came out of absolutely nowhere. And then at the end of last week, of course, we had an unbelievable fight between Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez. Scotland getting another undisputed world champion in Taylor after his mentor and hero, Ken Buchanan. Amazing performance. And we'll get into that because today's guest is a good pal of his, former gym mate of his. And he's somebody who... Him and Adam Smith, actually, were the last two face-to-face podcasts we did before COVID hit. That was last March. Little did we know at the time what was heading our way. So it's great to speak to him again. We haven't seen him since then. Hopefully we will see him in the flesh before too long. He has had a fight since we last saw him back at the end of March. Don't really need to get into that. I can't really remember what happened, to be honest. He is a man who now has more leisure time on his hands than he's maybe ever had in his life because he's hung those gloves up. Former two-weight world champion, Carl Frampton. How are tricks?
How you doing, boys? I'm okay. Going with the flow at the minute.
Yeah.
How you finding life, Carl? Has it hit you yet, or?
Yeah, it's all right. People keep asking me like, have I got any sort of buzz or interest in ever fighting again, or the itch, but not at all, and I don't think I ever will. It's just I'm relieved it's over, to be honest. And I was kind of towards the last few years, it was like almost like looking forward to hanging them up, and I understand that I'm not the fighter that I used to be, so it's the right time to get out, isn't it?
Yeah. Always. That is always the right time. We'll get onto that in a bit, but let's have a chat about Josh because it's so recent and it's so fresh in everybody's minds. It was, you know him well, as I said, you shared a gym with him, you're good friends, and it was just such a spectacular fight that you hope that these kinds of occasions will live up to the occasion, to the billing, yeah. And it absolutely did. It was just magic stuff, wasn't it? You've been in big fights. You know what the buzz around them is like. You know what the pressure to really deliver at that moment is like. It must have been great to watch him do it.
Yeah, it was. I watched it on my own. I actually watched it. The fight TV like that I had cut off halfway through round 9 and didn't come back on to halfway through round 12. So it was a disaster. I was banging my head off the wall for ages, but I ended up going back and watching it again. But it was an amazing performance, really, from Josh. And to kind of put in their perspective what he's done, he's completely become undisputed. He's undisputed in the light welterweight division, a marquee division, in his 18th fight. And I was just looking back there. Floyd Mayweather only won his first world title in his 18th fight, so that's to kind of put it into perspective a bit. It was an amazing achievement, an amazing performance as well, because at the start, the first few rounds, I was kind of a wee bit worried because Ramirez had a good start, and I feel like he may have hurt Josh once or twice to the body, maybe. He had a decent bit of momentum, but Josh kind of pulled away in the second half, and the knockdowns were brilliant shots. The uppercut especially, what a shot.
I think the fight with Prograis really stood to him in this fight. You've got to come back through adversity. You've got to readjust, adapt within a fight. I think that really stood to him in this fight.
Even the Branchik fight and even the Postal fight, because the Postal fight wasn't easy either. And that's, I think that shows you how important it is to be tested in them sort of fights before you take on the big, huge, massive fights, rather than building up a record against, guys you should always be beaten and then be thrown in at the deep end and not know what it's like. But Josh has always had that spitefulness and grit about him, even watching him as a green professional when he was sparring. Like, I remember him sparring. He probably had a couple of fights when I fought Santa Cruz in Vegas, and he was sparring Sean Porter at the time in Sean Porter's gym, and it was like Josh handled himself very well, but he was like very, very spiteful, like almost like, not that he doesn't respect fighters like that, but he's like, you know, he just doesn't let fighters like that take the piss, I suppose, a bit, and old man him. And he's honestly an unbelievable fighter. And I think obviously there's a bit of a debate and there'll be an argument for a few fighters, but I think that he's pound for pound the number one in the UK at the minute.
Yeah,
he's
I
got
would
a
agree.
fantastic mindset, hasn't he? Fantastic mindset.
Yeah, really does.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. You look at the run he's had, and as you say, he's achieved all of this in a handful of fights. Really, he's been moved really well. He's been matched really well. I did 2 or 3 of his early fights, and it kind of made me laugh actually a couple of times, really early on. And he won in the first round, and you could see that his opponent didn't really know that much about him, and that's how they managed to talk him into taking it, because both times he got put down early in the first round, his opponent, really early. And I saw this lad, I can't remember their names now, but both of them did the same thing. They looked at their corner as if to say, what the fuck have you done?
Yeah.
You know, you didn't tell me this guy was this good. And it was just, watching it from ringside was kind of comical in a sense. But I remember watching it myself on Saturday, and at the start of the 5th, just thinking he needs to do something in this round, because it had just started to, the momentum was there, like you said, and kind of right on cue. He just hit him with a hard 1-2, which just, it didn't hurt or really shake Ramirez, but it stopped him. And then I thought he went on and won that round. And then after that, he just, like you say, he took it away from him. You saw him in the gym, you saw him all over. And as you just described it, he does kind of look like he can do it all, really.
Yeah, he can. And that's my kind of prediction pre-fight was, as the fight got closer, I was more confident that he could win the fight. And I was always confident, and Josh was the one I was always picking, but my confidence kind of increased as the fight got closer. And trying to think about it rationally, I thought that he could outbox him, like he's a superior boxer, but I felt like he could also outfight him. And a lot of people thought that was going to be, that he couldn't do that against Ramirez, but I knew that he could. And it turned out at times in the fight that he did that, and especially in the second half, where they stood at close quarters. And he's just so well-rounded. He can do a bit of it all.
Matt, we talked about this at the end of last week when we were looking ahead to the fight, and in the aftermath of it, everybody's talking about him moving up to welterweight and fighting Crawford and how great that would be. But if he can still do super lightweight, why not just stick around? Because Gervonta Davis is boxing at super lightweight at the end of June. Garcia, he's so young, he's going to come up at some point. So's Devin Haney. That might happen in the next couple of years. There's plenty. Teofimo Lopez, of course, is massive at lightweight. It's a struggle for him from what we hear. There's so much ahead of him that 140 is, it's just no reason to leave, really, unless he just can't do it anymore. And he seemed to do it fine for the last fight.
I think if he can still do 140, it's not a problem to him. I'd like to see him stick around there and let these guys come up, the likes of Teofimo Lopez, because he's going to come pretty soon. I think it must be difficult for him to make lightweight. He's big at the weight, and keep that bit of an advantage, because it'll take them a while to grow into the weight, become a fully fledged 140 pounder. So he'll have the edge on him in that regard. But yeah, a bit like Carl said there, he's such a well-rounded fighter, because he's a well-schooled technical boxer. You know, balance, everything. He does everything correct. He's very correct. He's got a correct style. But because of that, it's easy to overlook just how much of a hard case he is. He's a tough guy. He can stand and fight. And I think he is probably mentally, he's more of a fighter than he is boxer. But technically, he's probably, his style is probably more geared around boxing. But you can see internally, his mindset wise, he's really got that fight in him.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree with all that. And I think that if he can stay around at light welterweight, then there's no reason why he has to move up. Obviously, if the Terence Crawford fight or something like that is muted and talked about, and someone's throwing 3 million or 4 million at you, then you have to think twice about it. But And the Crawford fight, Crawford is in some people's case #1 pound for pound on the planet at the minute. It's a big fight, but people for like Crawford came up from lightweight, so he'll not be outsized in that fight either. But I think that a name that hasn't been mentioned there is Jack Catterall, and if he wants to do a fight in Edinburgh, which we all know Josh Dawes talking about fighting at Edinburgh Castle, hopefully that can happen for him. I think a fight against Jack Catterall makes sense because Jack's been waiting in the wings for such a long time. Mandatory as long as Dillian White was, I think, when he was the mandatory for the world title, and Jack fully deserves his shot at fighting for the world title. So that's another option. And someone like Gervonta Davis coming up, the light welterweight. No disrespect to Gervonta Davis, but I think Josh Taylor beats the head of Gervonta Davis just because he's too big.
Yeah, because he's even just. It's only recently he's come up from super feather to lightweight to go up again. Another he's losing his advantages.
Yeah,
and you're right, Carl. I was a bit disrespectful there to Jack Catterall. He is mandatory and he does deserve his shot. And listen, I'm sure that ticks a lot of boxes in the sense that could happen in Edinburgh. That's
the thing. If Josh wants to fight in Edinburgh, that's the easiest fight to happen in Edinburgh. The rest of them guys that were mentioned, he has to go to the States. But if he does want to fight in Edinburgh, then the Jack Catterall fight, I think, can be made.
It's funny though. You see, I mean, Ken Buchanan's obviously been a massive idol, mentor of Josh's, and for him you could see him emulating him and making Madison Square Garden his kind of home venue. You could see that.
Yeah, potentially, and I think that with COVID being an issue, he would have brought a lot of people, a lot of Mad Scots, a lot of Brits really over to Vegas to watch him. And hopefully with things opening up here soon, they continue to open up and that he could have a big fan base. Like, you also talk about the Irish kind of having big influence on the East Coast, but he's Celtic, isn't he? And he could equally have a big influence out there as well.
Yeah, they'd all get behind Josh Taylor as well. Definitely. Like I said, Ken Buchanan was a big name in Madison Square Garden. He got massive fan base there.
That fight against Catterall, you would imagine that will be next because, as you say, he is the WBO mandatory. He agreed to step aside to allow that unification to go ahead. I remember seeing him ringside for a Maurice Hooker fight, what seems like ages ago now, when Hooker was the WBO champion. So he has been very patient. And as somebody who had your night outdoors in your home city, Carl, there you know what a massive occasion that would be for Josh. And you mentioned Ken Buchanan there, Matt. The mad thing about his career was that he never had a world title fight in Scotland, and that Edinburgh Castle fight would be absolutely epic. I think everybody would want to see it.
Yeah, no, listen, I think I'd imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine for Josh Taylor that's a box that has to get ticked, especially the way Edinburgh, you've been to Edinburgh, where the castle is in the city and everything. It'd be just an unbelievable setting. Obviously, that has to be a summer fight for it to be outdoors. So, I don't think that's going to be next or anything. But, at some point, I'm sure that's a box he wants to get ticked.
So just kind of moving things on slightly, whilst you're watching that fight, Matt asked you at the start, how you're kind of settling in with it all, and now you've hung the gloves up, and you alluded to the fact that it was the right time. It was the right time, and when you know it is, and that it's not there anymore, that must make it easier. So, but watching that fight between Taylor and Ramirez, massive fight, the kind of fight that you've been in. You could watch it in total peace, could you? With no kind of, you're buzzing off it, of course, but there's no kind of nagging sense of, I'd love one more of them. You can just watch that kind of fight now and just think, those days are gone. I can just enjoy watching other people do this now.
None of that at all. The only kind of feeling that I had was I'd love to have been there to watch him and support him from ringside. I'm not thinking I'd love to be involved in these big nights again, because I don't think I can do it anymore. I think I could probably still draw a big crowd if they got me an absolute thunderhead in the fight at home at Windsor or the Odyssey, but I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it anymore. So, You know, the
because it's not
dream-
just the night, is it, Carl? It's the training camp. It's going over to Manchester. You know,
being away from my family, the training camp, and you know, I understand that this is a hard game, and I think that the sparring and the amount of sparring you do, the hard camps can take years off your life. They really can. That sounds harsh, but it's true. And I think that I kind of reduced my sparring once I teamed up with Jamie Moore. But I had years and years of just punishment really in the gym. And it was time to get out for my own sake, really.
Yeah, I completely get that you wouldn't miss the hard graft of it. As somebody who's never done it, I can totally appreciate that. I guess you reach little milestones though, maybe once from day zero, and you kind of probably at one around about now, because it's 3 months ago. If you were still fighting by this point, you would probably know what was next.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a little adjustment, just things like that? You don't know now at the minute, which you're probably quite enjoying.
But I'm not even thinking like that. I'm thinking about like what I'm going to do, and I've got a few. Hopefully, I'd like to kind of pick up a bit of punditry. I've been doing that from time to time, and I get decent feedback when I do the punditry work. I would love to walk in the punditry gig. There's other mad things that have been talked about as well. So I feel like I'll be kept busy anyway. I don't think it's just going to be, I'm just going to go off in the distance and no one's ever going to hear of me again. So I was always a bit worried as to what actually I'm going to do when I do hang them up. But I feel like now at this point, I just want to settle down, and I'll take time to make decisions on that. But there's going to be, I feel like there's going to be options. So it's all good.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be. I've got some ideas actually that I'll share with you later on.
Okay.
I had a good think about it this morning. So Macklin, you've done this, like you knew it was the end too when you finished. You knew it was the end halfway through the fight against Brian Rose, and I've mentioned that a couple of times because it just makes me laugh. Because I know you now, it just makes me laugh, the idea of someone sitting on their stool mid-fight thinking, yeah, I'm probably better off not doing this anymore and just still having to suck it up for a few more rounds. But people talk sometimes about the first couple of years out of the ring being the most difficult for a variety of different reasons. I mean, how did you find it all when you finished?
Funnily enough, and I don't want to scare Carl because I don't think it'll be the case with him, but like him, I was ready. Do you know what I mean? Like I say, I lost the fight in Ireland. I think Jorge Sebastian Holland. I was going to retire. In my head and my heart, I had retired. Then there was Eddie called me up and said, "Do you want to fight Danny Jacobs for the world title?" So I thought, well, maybe could I get the weight down in a few weeks? How much? All this sort of thing. Boxing kind of sucks you back in. You know what I mean? It doesn't quite let you go. And then anyway, that never happened. But he had a show then in Birmingham in about 5 weeks or something like that. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll do an 8-rounder in Birmingham, box a nobody, get a win, and I'll just see. And if nothing else happens, I'll go out on a win in Birmingham. And that's kind of what happened. Then I got the win, and then it was like, go on, then I'll have another go at it, see what comes up. Because at that stage of my career, at that stage of my life, I've been a pro 15 years. It's a long time. You know, you've made a lot of sacrifices, and you've kind of a name still in the division. I could get a shot at a world title, and I'd rather cash out on a world title shot, where I'd obviously go all in. I'd be there to win, don't get me wrong. But, if I lost, you're going out on a world title fight. So that was kind of keeping me in it a little bit. I thought, I put a couple of good wins together. I could get a shot like that. And then I had a fight against Wellborn, which, I didn't perform well in. I won, but, it was a struggle. But there was always a reason or an excuse. Oh, that was because of this, or I couldn't get up for it, or I didn't really train that hard. I was just thinking about making weight. Then there was the Brian Rose fight come up, and I thought, well, you know what? He's a former British champion, Lonsdale belt out winner. He has challenged for a world title. Not if I'm anywhere near what I was, it should be an easy fight. If it's a struggle, then I'll know, So I went for that, but I did know halfway through the fight. But it really, when you look back, if you're totally honest with yourself, you move away all those excuses and reasons that you gave yourself for the performances beforehand. It was prior to that, but it was just when I've told you before, it was just a very sort of clear memory sitting on the stool thinking, I might not come out for this round. What's the point? It's over. And then I did and whatever. But, you know, what happened with me when I did retire, a bit like Carl, it was almost like I was relieved. It was a relief almost. It was almost a relief because it was, all right, I've done it now. I've made the decision. You know, when you're indecisive about something, when you made the decision, it's like the weight of the world's off your shoulders. And now I've got the rest of my life to look forward to. And, you know, I enjoyed the few months. It was the summer, went on holiday, all that kind of thing. Obviously, then in the September, I remember I signed, I'd done the deal with Michael Conlon to sign with Bob Arum with Top Rank. And then I was busy kind of getting that sorted for him. I'd done a week or 10 days out in LA with Mick. I brought him to see Manny Robles. He liked it there. Then we were finding the house for him, got that sorted. In between that, I was doing a bit of commentary for Sky in Vegas on the Ward Kovalev fight. You know, so things were busy. Then at that point, I said, well, I'll come out to New York and I'll get things going there. I'll manage him. I'll be the man on the ground. So I was. But then, so about 6 months into that year, about a year after retiring, it hit me. This is what I'm getting you ready for, Carl. And this might not come because your life circumstances are different to what mine were. But it definitely hit me. Not when I retired, because I was relieved to retire, but a year later it hit me. Then that's when the void hit me. Well, what am I going to do now? And I was in America and I was managing content, so it wasn't like I had nothing to do. But I just think that I don't think I'd really processed my own career. I think I just moved so quickly into something else. I hadn't really took time to digest it. But I know that's what happened to me. You could be completely different. But I remember speaking to Paul Smith, and he said it hit him a bit later as well.
Hopefully, I'm ready for that because, like, I was retired, like, win, lose or draw in that fight. I spoke to my family and I spoke to my kids and Jamie Moore and stuff, knowing it, and Nigel Travis. The team knew that I was retiring, win, lose or draw, and the objective was to win. Like, I thought I was going to win that fight. I had a really good camp and there's absolutely no excuses. But I had it in my head, like, I wanted to win the fight, and I thought I was going to win. So it's not as if I was beat in the retirement. I'd lost a fight and suddenly I have to retire. I knew I was going to do it. Disappointed with the result, obviously, but I have a feeling. Well, I'm hoping I'm right here. I'll touch wood. Hopefully, I'm going to be okay in 6 months or a year's time.
Yeah, I suppose what I mean. I'm trying to explain it. When I say it hit me a year later, there was no kind of desire to box again or anything like that. It wasn't that. It was just life after boxing now. Do you know what I mean? It was more that, you know, what's my new role? Who am I? What's my new identity? If I'm not Carl Frampton, the boxer, who am I now? Type thing a little bit, and just the structure and the routine of it all. And all of a sudden now, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? There was a little bit of that hit me, which didn't hit me when I retired, funnily enough. It wasn't until probably a year down the line that hit me.
It's a really interesting kind of transition. We spoke to Andy about it, Andy Lee, a while ago now, maybe 2 years ago now, not far off, something like that. Anyway, and he said that for a good while after the end there, and he was married and you know had a child. He said, I didn't really, and he didn't mean them, but he said for a while, he said, I just didn't really care about anything. You know, I was being dragged to meetings for this book I'm doing, and he said, I just don't really care about this. He just found it difficult to find anything else that you're going to get remotely as passionate about with regard to outside interest. You know, I would never count family in that kind of bracket. One thing I remember Paulie Malignaggi saying to me, this was only about a couple of weeks after he retired. Just want to see if this resonates with you too. I think I know what he meant, but I don't know for sure if I'm right. He said, well, one thing I'm really not going to miss. It was very fresh for him. He said, one thing I'm really not going to miss is taking myself to that place again. And I thought what he meant by that was taking yourself to that mental space where you have to be ready to do whatever it takes to win, knowing that doing whatever it takes to win could be deeply unpleasant and painful. Does that seem true to you, right to you?
It makes sense, doesn't it? That it's a difficult place. I don't know. Do you lose that you lose that as you get a bit older, and when you've achieved a certain amount of things? Does that desire and hunger maybe leave you? I don't know. I always felt like I had a desire, and I my wife actually made a joke recently in a group chat that we were in, that I had said before it, I'll run through a wall to make sure I have my hand raised at the end of this Jamel Herring fight, and she put a wee gif in this group chat of someone just running into a wall and bouncing back off it. So I don't know, like I had that mentality, like that I wanted to win. And I remember when the towel came in, at the time, I felt like I wish Jamie had given me a bit more time. And I didn't say it to him, but I felt like I wish he'd given me a bit more time. But I haven't watched the whole fight, but I accidentally seen some clips of it, and it was the right call. I didn't realize I was so out on my feet. I didn't realize I was staggering about as much. I had no recollection of being knocked down a second time at all. So it was the right call from Jamie. But when the towel came in, I felt like maybe being deluded, but I felt like I'm all right here. Flip me, give me a chance. But it was the right call.
But you know what, Carl? If you were at a different stage in your career, if you were 25, Jamie may have given you more time.
Yeah.
You know, even though you were you weren't in great shape at that point, because of Jamie's your friend, he cares about you, he knows where you are at your career, you're retiring anyway. Why would he let it go on another 10 seconds or so when but maybe if you're 25 and your whole career's ahead of you, and it can change your life if you stay in there and get the win. He might just give you that little bit. Like, we're talking fine margins, aren't we? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But I think maybe if that was a 25-year-old version, he would have given you that little bit more, or he just knew what's the point.
Yeah.
No, it was the perfect stoppage. We saw him get another one absolutely right. You were there, I think, as well. Madison Square Garden, Tommy Coyle against Chris Algieri. Perfect stoppage. And these things are really, really important. And there's a bigger spotlight on all of this now than there seems to ever have been.
But Jamie's a great fella in that regard, because boxing's a brutal game. You know what I mean? And we're in there to win it, and we're prepared to go through whatever we're prepared to go through to get that win. Like you say, unpleasant was a euphemism to go to hell and back to win. But so you don't want someone who's a bit queasy, because shit's gonna get real. It's gonna get brutal at times if you're gonna box at the top level. So you don't want someone throwing the towel in just because it's getting a bit hard in there. And Jamie's been in those kind of fights. He's gone to the well, so he knows what it takes to go there. So he's not queasy, but he cares about the people he works with. Jamie wouldn't be a mercenary. He wouldn't be able to train someone and not have a personal relationship with him. That's just not who he is. So he's in that. He cares about those people. Tommy Coyle, Carl Frampton, Martin Murray, whoever the lads are in there. I know Jamie, he genuinely, deeply cares about the people. So that's always going to come first. But at the same time, Jamie's a hard case. He's tough as nails. He's been there. He's been in brutal fights. And he knows when that right time is. And I think, as you said rightly there, Tommy Coyle, I think he gets it spot on.
Yeah.
So, something I'm interested to ask the pair of you, because I've never really asked you this, Matt. When fighters look back on their career, when they're kind of digesting their career, they'll often think about, have they achieved what they wanted to achieve? And when fighters turn over, they'll talk about what they want to achieve. And it's world titles, and it's boxing at big venues, and it's making as much money as you can. That's generally what people talk about. And that's absolutely fine. I mean, of course, and you need to have long-term goals. What I'm always much more interested in is the kind of personal aspirations or goals that you might have had when you were a kid, when you were starting out, the ones that mean a lot to you, but might not mean anything to somebody else. And to give you a kind of example of the kind of thing I'm getting at, like when you were starting out, when you were doing well as an amateur, either one of you, and you're thinking, this could be a job, I could do this maybe as a career, or when your early days as a pro, you might have thought to yourself, God, there's that bit of Birmingham or Belfast where, God, I'd love to live there. You go through it sometimes, you think, I'd love to live there one day. Or your mate's dad's got a great car and you think, I'd love to have one of them. Or, I'd love to stay in that hotel in town one day, something like that. Do you see what I mean? These little things that that don't mean anything really to anybody else, but to you are a big deal. And when you do it, it really means something.
I wanted to have, I always wanted to have a nice house. And while I had these dreams as a young kid that either I was going to be a professional boxer or a professional footballer, and I was all right at the football, but obviously I made the right choice. But I lived in a small terraced house in Tigers Bay. I had no garden, so my front door was just on the street. I had a tiny bit of a backyard, just a concrete, which is probably about the size of the room that I'm sitting in now. And I always wanted to have. I felt like some of my friends. I went to school in Glengormley, which is a wee bit more upmarket than Tigers Bay. And my friends some of them had semi-detached houses with like a side garden, and I thought these guys were yuppies. So I always just thought, a nice house, semi-detached with a side garden, nice front garden and a back garden, and I'd be delighted. So, and then as you get on, then the dreams turn into like. I was always to have a wee bit of comfort rather than a world title at an early age. And then it changed, and you want to have the world titles, and you understand then that the world titles bring money with it, and the life can be a bit more comfortable. But at the very start, I just wanted a wee bit of comfort, I think, in my life from wherever it came from.
Yeah, it's interesting that. It's interesting. I was listening to Ryan Burnett on Triss's podcast the other day, and he kind of toed and froed with it a bit. He was the same, and then it was about world titles, and then once he won the world titles, he realised that actually it wasn't about the world titles; it was about the other stuff, and that having a house was something that he'd always just having his own house. That was what he'd always wanted. Was there anything else, like any kind of early fights you can look back on and just think, I remember promising myself, if I win this fight, I'll buy myself this, whether it was, the latest trainers or a pair of jeans. I think Froch told us that after one fight, he bought himself a car, and, it wasn't much of a car, but he kind of really kitted it out, and he thought he was, the king of the world.
That was probably after he beat George Groves.
I got my signing on fee when I turned pro was okay, but it was more money than I ever had in my life, and I went and bought a PlayStation because I thought, right, I'm pro now, I'm going to be at home a lot, so I'll need something to do to occupy my time when Christine is away to work. I bought a PlayStation and a new mobile phone. First time I've ever had a contract on a mobile, and I was calling myself as a joke, like I wasn't serious, but I was calling myself the money man for a while, and I didn't have any money, like, but it was more than I ever had, So at the start, like I was PlayStation and a new contract on a phone.
Matt, how about you? Were there any you know what I mean? These personal aspirations that aren't going to mean a lot to other people, but it's just an achievable goal, or at least you hope it is, and it's one that just seems a little bit closer than I want to win a world title and go up in lights at Vegas, which you did, which Carl did. They just seem more within your reach. If I win this fight, get my purse, I'm going to go to town and buy myself this. Were you one of them as well?
Remember, really, I mean, when I turned pro, I got a decent sign on. I put it down on the deposit for a house. After that, really,
very sensible, Matthew. Very sensible.
Yeah, I put every penny down as a deposit, so it was. I was like, I'm not going to blow that, because I thought if I start spending it, I'll end up spending a lot. I'd end up burning a hole in my pocket. So I put the straight away, before I even had a chance to think about spending it uptown, I put it down on the deposit and bought a house. But I don't know, really. Did I buy any? I can't think of anything.
Fair enough. Actually, one thing I was meaning to ask you, the tattoo, Veni Vidi Vici, when did that appear and why? Because that hit the first time I saw you fight. I remember seeing it because as is the kind of de rigueur qualification for any boxing commentator, I studied Latin and ancient Greek at university. People might not know, but if you want to be a boxing commentator, that's what you have to do. And Veni Vidi Vici is a Julius Caesar quote. Yeah. I came, I saw, I conquered, and so it caught my eye. So what was that about?
you know what? I don't. I just heard it. It wasn't as if I went and I'd planned this for ages. I'd heard it. I hadn't conquered anything at the time, and I just went and got it done one day, just on a whim. So kind of, it's okay now that I've done a wee bit in my career and I won a few titles and stuff, but it wouldn't have made much sense if I done absolutely nothing, which I'd done up until that point when I got it. I hadn't done a thing. So it's okay now, but at the time it was just, I just done it on a whim. I wanted it. I liked the saying. I liked how it looked in Latin, and that was it. A bit like all my tattoos, they're all stupid. None of them are thought out. They're all a bit shit. And I got them all done on the cheap as well, because when I got them done, I didn't have any money. So yeah, it's just a stupid tattoo.
Maybe subconsciously you were putting that goal out there to put pressure on yourself.
It's a good story. If it went along well, it'd be a good story, but it was just a stupid decision at the time. Turned out to be an all right decision, because it's all right when you win world titles. It's all right to have a tattoo of anybody beat you on your chest.
Oh God, like impulse tattoos they've never struck me as being a particularly good idea. But when you're going to be stripped to the waist when you go to the office, which is what you fellas do, people are going to be able to see it.
See the fucking Carl on my back, which looks like Earl. Some people say it looks like an E instead of a C. That was me and my mates. We're like 16, and we were on the Shankill Road actually. And me, my mate Darren, and my mate Glenn all got Carl, Glenn, Darren on our backs. Just walked in the tattoo parlor one day. I remember coming home with my dad going like, "Are you fucking simple?" But yeah, I get stick about that tattoo still. But it doesn't annoy me that much because I don't see it. It's on my back, like I can't see it.
Yeah. That, God, I mean, Christ, my mum would have gone mental if I'd done anything like that. You're not a tattoos man, are you, Macklin?
No, never. Do you know what? I haven't got one, and I've never ever thought ever about getting one. And that's going to be quite unusual, really, because most lads at some point go through with it, whether they get one or not. They've definitely thought about it, but honestly, never ever wanted one at all. Never even thought about it.
I wish I never did, or I wish that I had went somewhere good and spent a bit of money on them rather than going to your mate's living room and getting it done.
Well, you know, it charts your journey, doesn't it? I remember speaking to George Groves a while ago, and he's getting his removed. He's getting them lasered. I think it takes like 2 or 3 sessions or something. They were already quite faded by the time he told us, because I think he'd had 2 sessions maybe. So you can get rid of them if you do something you really regret.
It's partly a sore though. He's got ones kind of potted about and stuff, smaller ones, but I've got like a really big one on my arm. I don't even know if you get that lasered. And apparently the laser is like worse than a tattoo. Yeah, it like burns your skin.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great. Nothing about it sounds great, to be honest. So let's have a chat though about what the kinds of things that you might be interested in doing. Punditry is an obvious one. You're a good fit for that. You're good at it. People, as you said, and you know, you're absolutely right. People enjoy your punditry. We both like working with you. We hope to see you soon. Our side of the fence, that would be great. Stuff closer to home. Are you thinking about that kind of thing?
Well, I'm in talks at the minute, and in kind of early stages of talking about some sort of community project, or maybe like a foundation. A foundation seems very grand, and it seems like it would be a lot of hard work and it would take a lot of time. But some sort of community project, I think, and I still don't really know what it's going to be, but I'm in the early kind of stages of discussing that with a few people who might be able to help me out. Something like that. There's a few mad ones. There's a few that I've been sworn to secrecy on as well. I can't say too much about. But there's a few. I can't really say much more than that. But there's a few wild ones that you wouldn't really imagine.
Well, like I said, I've got a few ideas, and I'll elaborate shortly. But with regard to the community project, I think that's always going to be something that could potentially be really, really rewarding. giving back to where you came from. How would you say Belfast is for you? You've got young kids. How would you say Belfast is for youngsters? More, I'm talking maybe more teenagers. It's that kind of age where the problems can arise, because there have been difficulties in recent weeks.
Yeah, no, I don't think, and I think it may be a bit of a cop out, and people may think it's a cop out to say that when you see the trouble on the streets in these kind of underprivileged working class areas, when you say there's nothing for the kids to do, there's literally nothing for the kids to do in some of these places, and especially in the middle of a pandemic, when their youth clubs are closed, their sports clubs are closed, their boxing clubs, football teams, they can't do it. I think. And I was one of them kids when I was young and a riot broke out at the bottom of my street. I joined it and got involved, not because I was a bad kid, but because I was excited by it, and it was just there. It was happening 20 yards from my front door. So whatever the project's going to be, it would have to be cross community. So it would have to involve both Catholics and Protestants. And it would have to be in them sort of areas where I'm from, where my wife's from in West Belfast. And I still don't know what it's going to be. It'll probably be boxing related. But yeah, we'll figure it out, and we're kind of discussing it at the minute.
Is there more cross-community friendship and activity these days than there used to be? I'm 10 years older than you, and I've always lived on the mainland, but my mum's from Northern Ireland, so I always paid attention when it was on the news. And when I was a kid, it was on the news all the time, and it was never good. And I think over here, people have the idea that because it's with the agreement, with the Good Friday Agreement, and with it not being on the news as much, therefore everything must be fine. But is it? Has a lot of progress been made, do you think?
It's better than it used to be, that's for sure. But with Brexit at the minute, and the protocol at the minute, and the border between the Irish Sea and separating Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, there's some people that don't like that, and there's potential for violence again. And I would hope that it doesn't escalate and get worse than what it is, but there's definitely tension at the minute. But it's a lot better than even when I was growing up. I was 11 or 12 when the Good Friday Agreement was signed, but it's just the last sort of few years have got worse than they were maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Just to bring it back to boxing, boxing's always been in the DNA of the city, and it is a complicated place for the reasons that we've just touched on there. And boxing's played a big part in bringing communities together. I've read Don McRae's book, which is a terrific read, and Jerry's story, who of course is so central to your own life and the role that he played in all of that. Belfast has got a pretty unique boxing DNA, really, is what I'm getting at. I mean, that city, if you're a fighter, it puts something in you that I don't think many other places do. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. You almost get a pass if you're a fighter, and you get respected as a boxer. More, people like it or not. I think it's a fair statement to say as a boxer you'd be respected more than any other sports person in Belfast. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's because it's such a hard sport, and a lot of people have done it in Belfast. I think if you're from a working class area, at some point you've probably been in a boxing gym. There's some mad stat that in like the ratio of boxing clubs in Belfast compared to the rest of the UK and Ireland is insane. They're literally, you could throw a stone and hit the next boxing club. They're all that close in that close proximity. But it's always been a uniting sport, and a sport. As an amateur, it's an All Ireland team. So there's Northern Ireland only in the Commonwealth Games, but you represent Ireland. I was very happy to represent Ireland as a Protestant from a Protestant area, because that's the way it was. So it's always been a uniting sport, even really in the height of the Troubles before I was born. My granddad tells me a story of he was like the secretary of the Loyalist Club on the Shankill Road, and it was a drinking social club, and West Germany fought Ireland on the Shankill Road in like the early 80s or maybe late 70s, in the height of the Troubles, in green vests with shamrocks on them. That wouldn't have happened in any other sport, but because it was boxing, they got a pass. And that's the way it's always been.
Yeah, that was in that rings a really clear bell. I think that was in a documentary I watched quite recently. People were talking about that. Matt, Belfast is somewhere that we've not been for some fights for a while, but both of us are really, really keen to get back there. It's as Carl mentioned there, what you can't really get your head around unless you go there and kind of steep yourself in the scene and speak to people from there. It's just how massive amateur boxing is in Belfast. It's absolutely huge. Amateur fighters are superstars. Paddy Barnes, Michael Conlon, these guys way before they turned pro were, up there with sports personality of the year, things like that. You can walk into a bookmaker's and ask for odds on an amateur fight in Belfast. You can't do that in many other places. It is some city when it comes to boxing.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't talk about Belfast amateur boxing clubs the way Carl could, but I even remember, myself, Brian Mcgee and Damien McKenna. I think it was Damien McKenna boxing in the '96 Olympics in Atlanta. Damien Kelly, that's right.
Yeah.
And, you'd be looking, you'd get the boxing news, and you'd get the top 10, Britain and Ireland type thing, and you'd be looking at all the different clubs, and you'd be following them. And obviously, I'd know about the scene in Ireland. I had cousins boxing in some of the Dublin clubs and that, and St Saviour's and that. So, I followed it. I did follow it, and I followed those guys in the Olympics. Damien Kelly, Brian Mcgee. There was someone else, I think, that boxed for Ireland in the Olympics in '96. Was it Darren Gough or Glenn Stevens? I can't remember.
Derek Thorpe, or not Derek Thorpe, something. I can't remember. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Like.
Yeah, I moved to Southpaw from Cork, was it?
Yeah, with a moustache.
Yeah. Derek something.
Yeah, can't remember.
I can't remember. Derek Roach. No, not Derek Roach. I can't remember. Roach, yeah. Whatever. But Belfast, when I was over there, funnily enough, I've been all over Ireland as a child playing different sports, and I'd never been to Belfast, but until we did the press conference for Michael Conlon turned professional. And I remember thinking to myself, fucking hell, it's not that big of a city. When you think of all the boxing clubs there, and then you think of all the stuff that went on there, and you realise, I know a lot of people from Belfast, and they're really close-knit within their communities, and thought, it's not that big of a city. And you think of some of the fighters they've produced, and through those times as well, unbelievable, really.
I think it's a small city. I think about 300,000 is the population of Belfast, maybe slightly less.
Yeah.
And the amount of fighters they produced, it doesn't compare. Other parts of the world can't really compete with it. I think Accra, Ghana, maybe one of the only places in the world that produces more world champions per head.
Yeah, I mean, if you go in, if you're comparing it, you can only really compare it pound for pound, like you say, per quote, on the size of the city. And like you say, I didn't even know that, but if Accra, Ghana, but you know what I mean? It's an unbelievable statistic, that is.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And it just brings to mind the scene of the Belfast leg of the press conference for your fight against Scott Quigg. I mean, it was just rammed out. We got into this last time we spoke to you, so we don't need to go there again necessarily. But I loved that fight, and the reason I loved that fight was that the build up just had that big fight feel. And the reason the build up had that big fight feel was because you had two legs to the press tour, and in Belfast, I mean, the turnout and the enthusiasm for it, and the coverage from the newspapers and the headline on one of the newspapers, that is the kind of thing you only get in very exceptional cases. It was amazing. It was amazing. So anyway, onto the business end of the podcast. Really, just slightly limbering up here because a few ideas I had for you, Carl. A few ideas I had for you. So, would you be tempted to go into the jungle or do Strictly or MasterChef or stuff like that? Because it's not making a serious enough point here, because you will get asked to do this stuff. You might already have been asked to do this stuff. This might be some of the conversations you've had that you can't go into. But the fun reality TV side, which is what all of those things are, would you be tempted by any of that?
Yeah, well, some of them. So the jungle, yes. It's probably the only kind of type of program like that I watch. I do like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I watch that. So if I got asked to do that, I'd say yes.
The boxers do well on that, Carl. The boxers always do well.
I think even people like David Haye always gets a bad reputation. But I know David personally, and I like Big David, and he's always been very good to me. And he came across really well when people seen the real David Haye rather than the pantomime villain that's always fighting people at press conferences. But boxers do well on it, and if I got asked, I would be all over it. MasterChef, that sort of thing, the cooking stuff, yeah, absolutely. The kind of, I know Big Tony done it, like the SAS type thing with Ann Middleton, something like that. I would be up for, but I'm not allowed to do the Strictly one. So unless I was dancing with maybe Anton or someone like that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't think my wife would be massively keen on that either, but I don't think that's a decision she's going to have to make anytime soon.
I had to laugh on the Strictly one. Do you remember when Calzaghe was dancing? He was as stiff as a board.
Right.
Well, I'd be even stiffer than Calzaghe.
Right, and I can't dance either. I can't dance. And I think people just imagine, a boxer with a bit of movement, they're going to be good. But yeah, I don't. Joe wasn't great, and he was a great mover as well.
Yeah, I'd be like the Tin Man.
Yeah, no, I've always just exactly. I always just assumed that boxers have all got great feet. I thought Calzaghe'd win it, but it is, it's difficult, and oh God, you're really putting yourself out there for something like that, because I'd imagine that dance feels like it is lasting forever. Yeah. If it's not really your bag. With regard to the jungle, is there anything that you got any real phobias?
I don't think I have any like specific phobias, but just like the next man who wants a rat on their head, you know what I mean? I wouldn't particularly like it. But yeah, I don't know. I suppose I don't know. I haven't been around too many snakes or spiders, so I don't really know how afraid I am of them.
Yeah, that's exactly that's the perfectly made point, really. Which is, there are some things that it might not send you screaming into the night, but you're not going to enjoy it, are you? No one's going to enjoy getting buried alive with a load of snakes. You're not going to think, oh yeah, that was great.
I wouldn't do it. People would have to starve if I had to go into a box with snakes, because when they're on the telly, my blood runs cold.
My dad sees a rat even on the TV, and he can't look at it, so he'd be a disaster.
Oh, Macklin, you better hope that the producers of Strictly and the Jungle aren't listening to this, because I'll just be thinking, God, it'd be great. Let's get this bloke could hate both of these. Let's try and get him on both of them.
I'm just saying, listen, I'm used to cutting weight. I can starve for a couple of days here, but I'm not dealing with them snakes.
What was really funny about seeing Haye and Amir Khan on it as well was the kind of, it always really makes me laugh watching elite athletes on it, because their mindset is different to other people's. It just is. With David Haye, there was one challenge they were doing. I can't remember the exact details of it, but it turned out that he could either stick it out to the end with the others, or he could quit, and it wouldn't make any difference to the overall outcome. And as soon as he kind of figured that out, he just said, right, so I could just stop now, couldn't I? It wouldn't make any difference. And Ant and Dex said, oh yeah, you could, but don't you want to stick in there with the two? Just go, no, that's it, I'm out, I'm done. Because there was no point to him continuing. And then with Amir Khan, the strawberries thing with him and Ian Lee, where he basically just stopped him. So they win the. If you don't watch the Jungle, then apologies, but you should, because it's fun. So they win the Bush Tucker, no, Dingo Dollar Challenge or whatever it is, go up to the kiosk and they get the question right and they get strawberries. And as they're walking back again, you just see this like ding light bulb goes on with the Amir Khan, which is just like, mate, we could just eat these and then say they got the question wrong and they'll never fucking know. and he talks him into it. And then he's absolutely fuming when later on Ian Lee's conscience gets the better of him and he tells him and he can't understand it. He's just like, why did you tell them?
That's right, I know. That was brilliant.
That was good fun.
TV, that.
It was. The SAS one, that's interesting that you might want to do something like that because that really does look hard. Bellew said that was properly tough. And we asked Frotch about this because he's good mates with Ant Middleton. And we just said, we always thought that if anyone was going to do that out of the lads we know, it would have been you, Frotch. And he gave an interesting answer. He just said the physical stuff, yeah, fine. He said, but all that stress position stuff with, screaming babies in your headphones. He just said, life's too short, and but you fancy the challenge, do you?
Just to see how tough I really am, really. That would be it. Well, boxing's it's a hard man's game, as you would all agree, I imagine. But it would be interesting to see if I could cope under them sort of circumstances.
Yeah, it does.
When I don't have to do it, you know what I mean? That's the thing. I'm busting my balls in the gym because I want to win the next fight. But it'd be interesting to see if someone's Aunt Middleton's shouting in my face while they're just saying, fuck this, I don't want to listen to this anymore and get up and walk out, or if I still have that kind of mental toughness.
I think that could really go either way, couldn't it? Because you could quite rightly think, I don't need this. But I guess it's more of just a curiosity thing from your side as to whether you could or couldn't do it. So one thing I've noticed watching TV over the last 2 or 3 years, and this is more my kind of own invention as to something you might want to do. It seems now really that you don't need to be that famous or have too much of a profile to get your own travel show. Pretty much every time I look up now, there's someone traveling the world, getting to go to places they've always wanted to go to. Greg Wallace is the most recent one I've spotted, like Weekends Away with Greg Wallace. I mean, I'm sort of interested in what he's got to say about fruit and veg, I guess, when he's on MasterChef, but no disrespect to the man, but I couldn't give a fuck what Greg Wallace thinks about going to Lisbon. So surely there's a gig out there for you if you fancy doing a little bit of traveling, a travel show.
Well, that wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be a bad one. Traveling's always nice, isn't it? Who knows? You can fire them out. You can suggest these to TV companies, Andy, and maybe they'll come my way. Travel and eating.
Eddie Hall's been doing one, hasn't he, in America?
I think Carl's going to be involved in boxing. I do. He's a great talker.
Yeah,
knows the game. He's made for the commentating.
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing that, but there's plenty of other opportunities out there. And the only other one I could think of really, which is probably my favourite, and for that reason, it's definitely not going to happen. But you might not be aware, people listening, that Carl's got an honorary doctorate. So I think he probably could, at a push, call himself Dr. Carl. So some kind of date. Yes, that's it. That is exactly, Macklin. That's what I'm thinking. Some kind of daytime chat show in the morning, sort of a higher brow Jeremy Kyle, but Dr. Carl.
It would be good crack. That I've never even that's from left field, that one.
I know plenty of contestants I can put your way.
Yeah, I mean, we'd never be short there, would we? If somebody let you down, we could just delve into the ranks of the boxing community and pack the place out. Or you could take your medical question, being a doctor. There's all sorts of strings. There's all sorts of strings to that bow.
I weigh people up and say, like, any prescriptions, let me know. But obviously, as an honorary doctorate, I can't hand out prescriptions. But what I can do as an honorary doctorate is sign passport photos. So if you're ever looking passport photos signed, give me a shout.
Carl, as long as you never have to resolve to what Andy's doing there, see all them books he puts in the background pretending he's read them. He puts different people on every week.
They're not even books. It's just a piece of cardboard with the kind of You know, it's just a backdrop. It's just a backdrop. Macklin's rumbled me. But speaking of books, I mean, would you be looking to do one at some point? Maybe let the dust settle a bit, or
I'm in the middle of one right now, with Paul Gibson, who you all know. Paul's a very, very good writer.
He did Ayman Mcgee's, didn't he?
Done Ayman Mcgee's, yes. William Hill Sports Book of the Year. What a story. And that's another thing. Christine my wife laughs at me about. She's like, Ayman Mcgee, at least, like, has a mad story. People want to read it, but she says I'm a boring bastard. So who wants to read it? Who wants to read about me? I don't know.
Well, plenty of people, I'm sure. And Paul, Paul's, I guess, was probably quite an obvious choice, but a great choice. The Lost Soul of Ayman Mcgee is the title of the book if people want to find it. It's great because it touches on loads of the stuff we briefly talked about earlier about Belfast and the politics and the complexities of it and how boxing fits in and around that. And then the life story of the man himself is, I mean, you know, I don't think anybody can really compete with Ayman Mcgee, to be honest. I mean, compared to his life story, you know, I think Elvis's would sound quite dull. He's an unbelievable character. So what's the kind of timeline on that, do you think?
Well, I don't know. Maybe kind of, there's different, they're talking about maybe the end of the year, but then they're saying it gets a bit diluted because everybody's trying to bring out autobiographies at Christmas. So it needs to be the correct time. I don't really know. We're in the middle of it now, and he's been doing it for quite a while, Paul. So I'm guessing probably early next year, something like that.
Carl, I'm guessing when he's obviously for him to write the book, I'd say he's spending hours talking with you, you know, so he's getting it right and that. What's it like reliving a lot of stuff?
You forget a lot, and that's the thing. It's my wife has like most women, photographic memory, remembers everything, so she recalls a lot of this stuff, and I go, oh yeah, and then I relay it to Paul. So it's been good. It's been good. A lot about there'll be a fair bit about my former team in it, so that'll sell a few chapters or a few books itself, I'm sure. So it'll be good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, some very interesting things have happened. Some unexpected things have happened. The story did not finish in the way that people would have imagined when you started out. So there's all sorts. I'm pretty sure I heard your wife tell quite an entertaining story about, or it might even have been you, because one of the many likable things about you is you're not shy of telling a story about yourself that doesn't make you look great, and we love that on this podcast. You know, Macklin is no stranger to telling stories about himself, which honestly at times make him look terrible. There's a great book in Macklin, but I think he's waiting until people have shuffled off this mortal coil before he feels comfortable writing it. But I might have made this up, but I'm sure the story went that you went round to her house to propose to her when you were hammered, I think, and she was ill and told you to go away and come back later.
No. I was. You almost got it right. We had a big fallout. We were just coming back with Paddy Barnes and his missus actually from Celtic Park, where Sugar Ray Leonard was doing a night, and we were getting the boat back home. And I was drunk, and I annoyed my missus, and I was being a dickhead, and she pretty much said, "Fuck off, you're ditched." But I'd already bought the ring, so I got the ring. I was like, oh, fuck me, what am I going to do? And I hadn't really thought about the proposal and what I was going to do, but I went to her apartment, and she was lying in bed sick, and I proposed to her. Worst proposal of all time, and she still hasn't let me live it down. But it was either that or never get the chance again, because she didn't want to speak to me, and it worked. So here we are, 2 kids later and married and everything else.
When you've had an argument, you know the shit's hit the fan when you're getting down on one knee to try and put it back.
Yeah, that is, yeah, you absolutely.
I had the ring. Like, so this is the girl I wanted to marry anyway. I had the ring, but I was a dickhead to her on a boat one night coming back from Scotland, and then yeah, That was me trying to make it up.
Well, you turned it around. You were up against it there in the second half of the fight. You were deep into the kind of championship rounds, and you were in big fucking trouble.
But he made the adjustments he needed to.
That's it. I think the only healthy way to discuss serious life issues is to try and provide some kind of childish boxing analogy, which is what we like to do. But I mean, we won't keep you much longer. But with the book though, Matt, we have kind of laughed about this, but The Life and Times of Matthew Macklin, that would be a good book.
Yeah.
Well, I was laughing when we were on about Ayman Mcgee there, and I was going to rehash Mumbergate, and I remember it was 10 o'clock in the morning, the Tara Towers in Dublin, and Ayman Mcgee was putting me to bed, a concerned member of society, putting me to bed. So, you know, when that's happening, you got problems.
What the hell?
Yeah, that would be a moment.
I fought on a Carl Frampton undercard, and it was in Nottingham.
Was it Butte? Lucia Butte? Yeah, you fought on that card, didn't you?
And we came back to the hotel, and I had a 12 rounder, and so I was tired, and I think I had a couple of pints and went to bed. Ayman Mcgee comes back in. I'm getting a story from my wife, because she sat up in the bar with everyone. He came back in with like black marks all over his head because he'd just taken a wheelie clamp off someone's car outside to help him out. So he took his clamp off, he's back in, but it's really, really late. And apparently it was that late, it was early. So there was some families like having early breakfast, and McGee's still trying to buy drinks, and the guy wouldn't, or says, right, that's the last order, not getting any more. So we ordered like 15 pints of Stella and just sat when there's kids having their sausages and stuff around him. And there was a wee bit of trouble and stuff apparently, but it all ended well.
That was an unbelievable night. That's I think it's probably still my number one. Butte against Froch. The atmosphere that night was absolutely extraordinary. And you were in with one of the Butte kind of stablemates, weren't you? Was it Pierre Olivier Cote, or was it? Or?
No, I fought a Mexican, Raul Herale, as you call him.
Oh, okay.
So it was a chief support, actually. It was a good slot. It wasn't a great fight. It was an okay fight, but they were all there to see Froch anyway.
But it was late too, wasn't it? Because it was on Epics, I think, in North America. So, but the atmosphere when Froch came in was wow. I mean, it was something else. It really was. Last quick one, because it is quite tough.
I've got a quick one. I just wanted, because you just come up when you're talking about Butte there, and I remember thinking Froch, like that was got to be one of his best moments against Butte. What was the highlight, Carl? Was it the Santa Cruz win in New York?
Yeah, well, probably. It's definitely one of them. There's a few. You know, the first world title against Kiko as well, just because of where it was, you know, purpose-built arena in Belfast, that was up there. I would say either the Santa Cruz win or that one. It would be hard to pick. If you ask me tomorrow, maybe a different answer, but I'd say it has to be between one of them two.
Yeah, I mean those would be, if I'd had to guess, then those would be the two that I'd imagine you would put top of the pile. The one thing that I just wanted to ask you before we wind up is a kind of topical question. I mentioned AJ Fury at the start there. Now we know what's happened. There's no point rehashing it to death. But you're a top-ranked fighter. You know Bob Arum well. I asked Matt about this last week, and he says a little bit more coy than he is normally, perhaps. But I found last week very, very interesting, because it just looked to me like Eddie Hearn has been played by Bob Arum here to an extent, because the way that they've moved so swiftly with this third fight between Wilder and Fury, and we're talking a matter of days with regard to things being signed and dates being in place. At the very least, he knew, didn't he, Bob, that the arbitration was much more likely to go against, was much more likely to force that third fight than maybe.
Well, looks like thought. It. That they had the backup plan, didn't they? And it's a bit of a from the outside looking in, it's a bit of a shit show. But Bob Arum may have played a blender here. Maybe that's what he wanted to do, piss Eddie off. I don't know. I don't really know. But looking in, it's a bit crap, and it's the fight we all want, and it's like it's a bit like, who cares about Fury Wilder or AJ Usyk at the minute, which are all incredible fights, but just because this one's been talked about so much, it's just a bit of a shame.
No, that's true. That's true. And I don't think Eddie comes out of it badly, because he did put that fight together. Okay, it didn't quite get over the line, but he did put that fight together. He got it done. And he did it basically by himself. So, yeah, he might be feeling a little bit bruised at the minute, I would guess, but I don't think that'll last for very long. I mean, what was it like working with Bob?
It was all right. He was dead on, but he's a promoter, and you have to understand, all promoters are like, they are looking for the next guy, and all promoters are the same, mate. They're all the same. They're the nicest guys in the world, and not this is me having a dig, but I have a respect for Frank, Bob, Eddie, all these guys, but you have to understand they're just promoters, and that's it.
Yeah, I think if you do understand that, then that's the way as a fighter to keep your kind of sanity, isn't it? Because if you expect cuddles and phone calls every single day of your life off your promoter, then you're probably going to be.
When you lose a fight, they're after the next guy, and that's it. So as long as young fighters know that, then this should be all right.
Okay, well, we'll wind it up there. I mean, another obvious thing to ask you would be whether you got any plans to be a trainer or manager or anything like that. But I don't think you do you? I think you've always been fairly clear on that.
Definitely not train anyway, because 12 weeks in a camp, and then I can go and have 4 weeks or 5 weeks off as a fighter. But Jamie Moore, for example, he's getting the next fighter ready, and he has no family time, and that's the real important thing that I want, family time.
Okay, well, you certainly you should have the time to do that now. You should have the time, as I said, more leisure time now on your hands over the coming months than you probably had since.
Certainly earned it. You know, I know I've told you face to face and on social media, but I just want to say now here, Carl, congratulations, man. Unbelievable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, here, that's perfect timing, because someone's just done a bit of work on my house with a TV, so I need to go and see him quickly before he leaves, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. On your way. Thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you. Hopefully we'll see you in person soon, ringside. That'll be fantastic.
All the best, boys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And to everybody listening, thanks for joining us as always. You can get over to YouTube if you choose to and check out some of the things we've got to offer on the YouTube channel. If you could click subscribe, that would be really, really handy. And we'll catch you again soon.